What's your name? Charlie, this is Hamza.
Nice to meet you, Charlie. Right.
We're going through what's going on
Okay.
in Palestine.
We're just raising awareness about Palestine, and we're just giving these leaflets out. All they're doing is that it's referencing people who are academics who know what's really taking place on the ground. Right. It's very easy to get to be swayed by emotional argumentation. Right. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Um, like you do something wrong, right? And like your dad says, "How dare you? How dare you say that?" Right? He's not addressing whether you did right or wrong. He's basically using something called like semantics. He's using emotional language to basically try to put you in your place. The media does the same thing, right? It tries to manipulate the narrative to their own agenda, and the British government has its own agenda. Every government has its own agenda, right? So because BBC is coordinative with the government, whatever the government wants is what BBC is going to report. So therefore, you can't really trust the media in the sense that you can't trust its narrative. You don't know if it's telling the truth or not. Therefore, what we've done is we've said, okay, there are people saying that Palestine, what's happening in Palestine is this. There's people who are Zionists and who are the media who are saying one thing. All right, let's see what's actually happening. Then you have the people in the middle. These are academics who have studied something called political science. It's a degree that you can do at uni, and all it does is gives you the tools and ability to really understand and go past through that propaganda and see the statistics behind what's actually taking place. So people like Norman Finkelstein, Ilan Pape, Noam Chomsky, these people are academics, and all they've done is study this particular problem over the last couple of years, and they've wrote books about it, right? So therefore, it's not like, oh, it's one emotional argument or another emotional argument. We literally have stats from primary resources telling you that this is what's actually happening on the ground. Therefore, we are recommending people to have a look at these people on YouTube. Does that make sense? Some of these people gave up because a lot of people think this is a new phenomenon. This has been happening over the last 75 years. So, this kind of problem is not a new thing. So, something called Al Nakba. Al Nakba is an event in history, in Palestinian history, where similar kind of casualties took place as of today, right? Where they were Nakba in Arabic means catastrophe. So it was like a massive removal of Palestinians from their own like hometowns. So, for example, let's say I live in Bury. I would be like forced to move to something like Birmingham, right? And now I'm homeless. Therefore, I now need to build a home or create a home or live with a family until I can put my own family on its like on 2 feet, etc., etc. So these people were forcibly removed either into Jordan or Egypt, right, through warfare, right? So we're trying to raise awareness about that. That it's not a new thing. It's been happening for a very long period of time. And I'm not sure if you've studied the Holocaust before. You have, right? The Holocaust was there was a systematic process that took place. First, it was to be collect the Jews into certain pockets of land. Then it would be to transport them to X, Y, and Z. Make sure that there are walls fortified around these particular places, right? Remove medical aid, remove businesses, remove any kind of food aid, right? Everything would now be regulated under German authorization, right? Nothing was independent no more. So there was like a step-by-step process that was taking place. Similar with Gaza, similar with Palestine. Every town has like fortified walls around it, so you can't leave or come in, right? Not every town, but Gaza in particular. Gaza has walls as high as that building that go, or even higher, that go around the 25-mile perimeter of Gaza. So if you're born in Gaza, you don't leave Gaza. Does that make sense, right? Unless you have the permission of the Israeli government, right? So it's not like as if they're free. You're born in an open air concentration camp. Now, what Israel has done for nearly 1.5 years is cut off the food, electricity, and water supply. So charities are now having to intervene. That's why there's a food crisis right now in Palestine. A lot of people are dying from hunger, or people are being creative, like on how to survive, right? And this is not my words for it. This is the UN saying this. The United Nations. They're saying this. I'm not saying this. And as of recently, I think about 6 months ago, South Africa basically took Israel to court in the International Criminal Court of Justice. They basically said that we want to hold a case against Israel for the crimes that's committing in Gaza. This is South Africa, right? Now, Ireland has also joined that case with South Africa. Does that make sense, right? So it's not. It's slowly, when people are now realizing what's actually taking place. like other countries are now backing, the people of Palestine. And if you really want to understand why it's taking place, I recommend you have a look at somebody called John Perkins. John Perkins on globalization, right? This person was CIA, then he left, and he talks about how these high powers like America, Russia, UK, they manipulate third world powers into positions where they're either forced to give their resources or like they have their puppet in place. Palestine is surrounded by so many Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, like Dubai, Qatar, right? Egypt, Jordan, but none of them will do anything for Palestine, right? Rather, they will make treaties with Israel and support them. And we're like, how is that the case? The people are so different and the government's so different. It's because America has put their own proxies in place, right, to manipulate them regions, right? We are authentically an Islamic table, but since this genocide kicked in, we have been giving out, these leaflets, raising awareness for it because it's number one priority. Innocent lives are at stake at the moment. But I have this nice question for you. What's your goal in life?
Just to be happy.
Okay. Would you say that that's like would you say that's your purpose of life, to be happy?
I feel like people's purpose in life is to help as many people as they can.
Okay.
But on a personal level.
On a personal level, yeah.
It's important to be as happy as possible.
That's possible. Right. Would you say that's your ultimate purpose?
Help people. Yeah.
Help people, yeah. Do you think helping people makes you happy?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So, from the Islamic perspective, this is let's leave aside religion. There's philosophers that have talked about, what's the purpose of life, or is there a purpose to life? So some people say that that's a non-question. It shouldn't be a question in the beginning. Some people say that chasing the purpose of life means that you've wasted your life. So there's two perspectives, right? If there are two perspectives, do you think it's sensible to see which one's right, which one's wrong?
So I suppose it can be, but it's hard to find.
Okay. I personally believe happiness is part of the purpose of life. I don't think it's the ultimate purpose of life. Right? I think helping people is part of the purpose of life, but I don't think it's the ultimate purpose of life. Because if happiness and helping people were let's say our human purpose, right? Then life would be designed in such a way where we would be able to do them things over and over again, right? For example, life is up and down, up and down, up and down. The Quran says you'll experience hardship then ease, hardship then ease. That's the cycle of life, right? There's never going to be a coasting ease, right? It's impossible. It doesn't exist. Not in this life anyway, right? And helping people, you'll be able to help people, but then you'll also be in positions when you won't be able to help people. You'll be the one that will need help, right? So from the Islamic perspective, we understand this life is a small period of time. Before you know it, it's over, right? Ask any old relative that you have. Ask any person that's, let's say, elder in age, and ask them, where their life's gone, and they're like, no, it's gone. Right? I remember I was 18 yesterday, right? But now I'm like 76 or whatever. And a lot of people start becoming depressed at the end of life because they feel like that this is life is it, and now they have to basically come to terms with that they're not going to exist anymore. From the Islamic perspective, we believe every human being has a soul, right? And that this life is a short test. The purpose of this life is to connect with the Creator. Islam is based around this concept of monotheism. Do you understand what I mean by monotheism? Right? So we believe that there is only one God, right? One Creator, and that the purpose of this life is to connect with this said Creator, right? Not to necessarily live this life heedlessly. There's no problem with Islam is not against enjoying life. Enjoy life, but don't lose sight of the reality. The reality is that everybody will taste death, right? And what Islam does, it gives you a toolkit on how to prepare yourself for that moment and how to live life easily, right? So there's certain guidelines that we follow, not to necessarily do it for the sake of it, to create ease for ourselves, right? So for example, don't get me wrong, Islam itself is a way of you becoming the best version of yourself. Don't get me wrong, there will be people who will drink alcohol or gamble or party or do said X, Y, and Z. where like they are amazing people. I'm not saying they're not, but my argument would be that they are losing out of them living the best version of their life or becoming the best version of themselves, right? Is alcohol, right? I personally, I'm studying to be a physician associate. Do you know what this is? All right, okay. Basically, something like a doctor, right? But I'm not, right? I'm studying to be a physician associate, and a lot of cases that come in through A&E are people who are either alcohol related, drug related, a lot of suicide related things as well, like depression, etc., etc., right? Um, then you have obviously the main ones like cardiac, heart failure, breathing problems, etc., etc., right? But there are a lot of cases that are related to alcohol and drugs, and Islam says no alcohol and drugs, right? So I'm like, wait a minute, okay, I'm thinking as an outsider, right? That kind of makes sense, right? That if we don't drink alcohol, we don't do drugs, it will be something better for society. When you look at the statistics from a social perspective of how many abuse cases, how many childhoods are messed up because of alcohol, how many riots take place after football matches, women abused during World Cup because of the alcohol intake, etc., etc. And I'm like, all them problems can be avoided by just taking away one simple thing, right? So Islam doesn't try to go into problems and try to figure it out. Islam tries to remove the root cause of a problem, right? So what Islam does, it helps you live life purely and in ease, right? Like you're not thinking. Let's say, for example, if you have a partner, you're not thinking, "Oh, my partner is going to do this X, Y, and Z," because in Islam there are huge consequences for doing certain actions, right? So we personally believe that if men and women should not mix in one room, right? They can learn, right, together, but they can't and they can work together, but they can't just mix casually for the sake of it, right? And some people are like, oh, what are you saying is so backwards, right? But from an Islam perspective, there's wisdoms behind it. Let's say, for example, you have a partner, right? The way men are wired and the way women are wired is different. We know this from cognitive science now. The way we think is differently, right? Uh, there has been no studies to suggest that women are more intelligent than men and men are more intelligent than women. There's no study showing this so far. But what we have learned is that the way we think, the way we approach different kind of situations are different, right? Our hormonal differences, etc., etc. So they have an influence on that as well, right? Um, so Islam says that okay, men are more visual, right? So when it comes to say attraction, etc., etc., men are more visual. Women are more they emotional and they think and they hear before they contemplate. It's don't get me wrong. There's not much difference, but there's slightly more visual to the male side, right? From cognitive science, Islam says that men should lower their gaze in front of women when they are in these kind of casual gatherings, right? And it avoids any kind of ill thoughts and behavior. It basically creates a pure sense of identity. Does that make sense, right? You're not going to be thinking, oh, why is my friend looking at my wife, or why is my wife looking at that guy, etc., etc. It removes that kind of problem. Does that make sense? So this is very something new to the West, right? And something that the West is not used to. But I truly believe that if it is, let's say, looked into and researched a bit further, I think it will create a lot more peace within homes, right? The number one reason of why divorce takes place, first one is a lack of connection, right? Then two is infidelity, cheating, right? So I'm saying, okay, the lack of connection, that is something that needs to be worked on, right? But when it comes to infidelity, that can clearly be removed. You can put systems in process to remove that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Just one more question. I know it's freezing cold. Uh, how do you think this universe came around?
Personally, I'm atheist.
Okay.
I'm very often believe in learning about them. So I like to think that if there is a creator, that he created the universe to create the universe, let it develop, and then didn't touch it. So we could learn and do advance on our own.
Okay.
But I do personally believe in the Big Bang.
You believe in the Big Bang?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do believe that if there is a creator, that he created the Big Bang to let us advance on our own.
I believe in the Big Bang as well.
Yeah.
Because I come from a scientific background. At the end of the day, the Big Bang is a theory,
Yeah.
so you can't put 100% reliability on a theory. But I do think it makes sense.
Yeah.
But what I disagree with is that it happened on its own.
Yeah.
So do you understand what the Big Bang is?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's energy matter compression into one singularity, then a rapid expansion. That's what the Big Bang is, right? Scientifically and logically, it's impossible for that thing to have initiated itself.
Yeah.
Because then then my logical question would be, where did that energy matter come from?
Yeah.
Right? What is the source of this energy and matter? Right? So, that's just coming from a logical and a scientific perspective, right? Quantum physics has showed no significant proof of something being able to come on its own, right? There is like a quantum field, right, where there has been studies on how like atoms can arise, right? But a quantum field is still a fleeting source of energy. It's not absolutely nothingness, right? So you can't get something from nothing. Does that make sense, right? There has to be something to put the constants and the ability for that thing to arise there, right? So what I'm saying is that the Big Bang happened, but I disagree with is that it happened on its own. Would you say that it's more logical?
Yeah.
Right? So it's like me saying, I'll keep it simple. If I give you a glass of nothing, sprinkle nothing into a glass of nothing, pour nothing into a glass of nothing, what do you have a glass of? Nothing, right? So you kind of got something from nothing. It's impossible. So, and let's say if there is a creator, right? Now, there's multiple kinds of proof. Not everything is proven through empiricism. Empiricism is when you use your physical senses, five senses, to basically come to a conclusion, right? Like I can see under a microscope, that's empirical form, empirically proven. I can see, I can hear it, I can touch it, I can taste it. Therefore, empirically, it exists, right? But there are things that that exist, that we live in, that we deal with on a daily basis, that cannot be proven empirically. I'll give one example. Hatred, love, injustice, idea. These are all abstract concepts. Mathematics is an abstract concept. Mathematics is not like a real thing. It's an idea that we use in our daily lives, right? You can't smell the number two, you can't taste the number two, but you know that it exists, right? So the reason how we prove its existence is by using, this is a heavy term now, something called ontology. Use ontological proof. Proof using premises and thought to basically prove the existence of said thing, right? So, for example, premise A: all lawyers wear red coats. Jack wears a red coat, therefore Jack is a lawyer, right? That's a ontological proof, right? This is a false thing. Just to give you an example of what I'm saying, right? So we know that there's abstract concepts that exist that can't be proven empirically. Similarly, when it comes to the universe, because no one ever saw it, no one experienced it happening, we have to go to logic. Science hasn't got the ability now to explain how it started. It can explain the process of it, how it works, but not how it started and why it happened. Then you have to go to like philosophical argumentation and logic. Does that make sense? Right. I appreciate your patience. This book goes into like further detail about what I just said. And what's your name, by the way?
Charlie.
Lovely to meet you, Charlie.
That's me.
And this is about the Quran. Let's say if there is a creator, for argument's sake, do you think it makes sense for that creator not to communicate in some kind of way?
Yeah.
Why?
Like they're created, obviously, a very powerful
Yeah.
like being. So they'll created other like universes, other planets. They'll be very busy. Obviously, they're all powerful, so they can cover everything at once. But if they've created something, I don't think they'll want to interfere with it.
Okay.
Because then they can, like, even though they're all knowing, they can still see how it works more and give more understanding to us.
You know.
Creatures.
Okay. Do you know? Let's say you create something that's living, right? Let's say you give birth to a child. I'm not saying that we're children of the creator or whatever, right? But let's say if you give give birth to a child, right? I have a child, my wife, like I'm not married, but let's say my wife gives birth to a child, right? Would you now, as the said creator, would you now leave that child on its own, or would you like give it a form of system or like some kind of guidance on how to like get by?
Yeah.
You would, wouldn't you? Right? So, uh, so from a perspective that if something created something, right, where we are not all powerful, we are not all knowing. This creator, we can't fathom really. Even saying all knowing doesn't really do justice to the creator's knowledge or power because we can't measure it, right? We can't fathom what it is because we can't even measure the universe. The universe, we've not reached to its end. It keeps expanding, you know. So we can't even measure the universe. Never mind the creator of said universe, right? So from the Islamic perspective, the creator has sent guidance to humanity throughout history, not just Muhammad, peace be upon him, Jesus, Abraham, Moses, Adam, 124,000 different prophets all over the globe throughout history. So like people talk about Buddha, people talk about this. It could be very be possible that said person in that region may have been chosen by God to deliver a message, but over time that message has been corrupted by people after. So we're not Buddhists. We don't believe in Buddhism, right? But it's very possible that he could have been one of those 124,000, right? Because from our understanding, Islam reached everywhere. Africa, Americas, China, Europe. There would have been somebody that communicated a message about the truth, right? So, but only few were given revelation. Now, we don't believe in said Bible is because they are historical accounts about the life of Jesus after said prophet. They're not necessarily revelation to the prophet. We believe that Jesus was given a revelation in his language in his lifetime. Jesus spoke Aramaic. It's a sister language of Arabic and Hebrew, right? Not Canonic Greek. So he would have been given revelation in that language, but we don't have that today. Therefore, that's why the Quran was revealed to re-establish those same teachings of those past prophets, right? So that's our understanding that there is some kind of manual to life, right? It's not necessarily we can't figure out a lot of things on our own. It's just harder though. Does that make sense? So this book goes into more detail about that as well. Do you have any questions about what I've said?
No, thank you.
It was very nice meeting you. I can write a reference down for you on the uh, on the booklet that I gave you. With my pen. Do you have that booklet on you? We're not from Blackburn. I'm not sure if you could. Do I sound like I'm from Blackburn?
I don't really hear accents.
Okay. We're not from Black. We're from Bury. But basically, there's no class here right now that basically provides the greater community for like a class where they can learn about more about Islam and what it has to teach and what it has to preach, right? But we have like a class in Bury though, and Manchester always has stuff like that because there's a city, isn't it? But, L95AM 51 the road. It's every Sunday, 3 to 4 p.m. It's 4 p.m. and bus 481 and I know it's very cold. So this is a YouTube channel. Can you read my handwriting?
Yeah.
Right. This is a YouTube channel that goes over the basics about Islam, and this is this is a search called Reverts to Islam. So these are people who were non-Muslim and then they became Muslim. You know, the early followers of Jesus, the early followers of Moses, the early followers of Muhammad, they weren't like me. I was born into Islam, right? These people were non-Muslim, then they became Muslim, right? They learned about Islam and they chose that way of life, right? It wasn't like it was like they were brought up in it, right? So these people who, let's say, were non-Muslim today and they became Muslim, they talk about why they become Muslim. There's some funny stories so there's people who are ex-EDL who became Muslim, people who were part of the U.S. Army, U.S. Marines, they became Muslim. There's actually one case of a particular soldier. He came back from a tour from Iraq, and he he had PTSD. So people with PTSD have lots of problems. He thought it would be wise to go up and blow up his local mosque. And on the way to go and blow up his local mosque, he met an old Muslim lady. This Muslim lady invited him to his home, invited him to her family to have dinner, food inside the mosque, right? He ate inside the mosque, and then he thought, "This, wait a minute, this is a bit different to what we're told, right?" In the army, he then learns about Islam bit by bit, bit by bit, bit by bit, and guess what? That man is now the imam of that mosque, well, that you're supposed to blow up, right? So Islam is very eye-opening, and anybody who, let's say, wants to, let's say, bet just for your own self,
Yeah.
I would really look into it and see what it has to offer, right? And we're not forceful,
Yeah.
never have been. This is a misconception that we force people to be Muslim, right? We, from our understanding, from our creed, we believe guidance comes from God. We can only convey a message, and the rest is in God's hands. But let's say if my child tomorrow chooses not to be Muslim, I can't do anything about this, right? I can't force him to be a Muslim. I can tell him, son, I think from a logical perspective you are wrong, right? But at the end of the day, I can't force you. There's a verse in the Quran that says, "La ikraha fid din." There's no forcing in religion, right? Other religions do force people, right? We don't. So that's a clear thing from our understanding, right? Well, have a look at it, and I'm here every Saturday. If you have any questions, please do let me know what you think of it.
Thank you. Anytime.
Lovely
Good
to meet
day.
you, Charlie. See you.